Hi readers, Chris here. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. If you watched my wrap-up from August, you will know that I actually buddy read this book with my friend David over at David's Book Reviews. This is the second buddy read that I've done with David, and I have to say, I believe that David and I both liked this book a lot better than our first buddy read, which was Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. I'll link that in the description below in case you want to check it out. But for today, we're going to be talking about Shadow of the Gods, which is a series I had never read before, an author I had never read before. Like I said, both David and I really enjoyed this book. It was number 2 on my list for my top reads in August. It could have been number 1, like 1 and 2 were very, very, very close. But I'm going to stop rambling and let David tell you what he thought about this book. So let's cut to David.
Hi guys, my name is David and thank you Chris for having me on your channel. This was an extremely enjoyable book for me to read with Chris, and I just wanted to tell you guys about what I liked and disliked about this novel. First, my likes. I liked the way that this book is written. It is written in such a beautiful and easy to understand way, and it flows really good as well. The characters are so rich and detailed, and you feel sorry for them and you are rooting for them as they're going through their journey through this whole novel. I like the whole world building and I wouldn't say the cultures, but the myth of all these giant beasts that were considered these gods. And also I liked all the fighting scenes. There is loads of blood and gore and it doesn't hold back as well. It's really, really gory and I love it. In fact, there was a lot of times when I even had trouble putting this book down because I was thinking, oh, I've read my section today, but I want to read more. So that was something that I enjoyed. I think the only thing that I disliked about this novel, without nitpicking it to bits, was the fact that it had loads of side characters that I couldn't remember exactly who they were. So I thought that could have been reined in because I had trouble remembering who is who, and especially the minor side characters that were in the background fighting. I couldn't remember them specific characters, so I thought it would have benefited John to tighten down the side character number. So guys, that's it. That's all I had to say. So let's just go straight back to Chris now.
Thank you, David. Again, it was so much fun to buddy read this book for you. You are officially the person I've done the most buddy reads with, the only buddy reads with on book 2, but someday there'll be someone else. So anyway, as David said, The Shadow of the Gods is based on Norse mythology. So this is like, if you've ever seen the show Vikings, or if you know like Thor and Odin, like this is a very Norse-inspired world, and it's a very violent world. So everyone fights, everyone has big battle axes and all this type of stuff. And the one thing that I really like about this world and really appreciate about this world is that the way that gender dynamics work, the women and the men, for all intents and purposes, are equals. The women are just as much of warriors as the men are. So this book actually follows 3 different characters. We get 3 POVs. We've got Orca, who is kind of a retired warrior woman. She's a mother, she has a family, and she's kind of left that life of warrior behind until something happens. 2, we have Elvar. Elvar is another female character. She is the daughter of what's called a Jarl, which in this world is basically like an earl. So her father is like this well-known and powerful guy, but she doesn't want to just be like a member of his group. She wants to make her a name for herself as a warrior. So she goes off and joins this other group of warriors, and adventures ensue. And then third, our third character, his name is Varg. Varg has just recently escaped being a thrall. And a thrall is kind of like an indentured servant. So if you are a thrall, that means someone has captured you, someone has collared you, and you're basically kind of forced to serve whoever captured you, like your master. It is like a form of slavery. I don't want to call it that because it's not exactly the same, but it's indentured servitude. Varg has recently escaped this being a thrall. Someone murdered his sister, and he is like hell-bent on figuring out who murdered his sister so that he can get revenge. And in order to achieve that, that is his goal pretty much throughout the entire book. In order to achieve that goal, he joins up with a group of warriors so that he can basically earn the right to use their resources to get what he wants, to get his goal. While all that is going on, there are rumblings. Stuff starts to happen in this world that no one knows why. There's this group that's going around and kidnapping children. So children start disappearing, and no one knows why. No one knows why these kids are being kidnapped, where they're being taken, what the heck is going on. That causes a lot of strife in a bunch of these different plot lines. Without giving away spoilers, I won't say which, but if you paid attention to what I said about the characters, you could probably put 2 and 2 together. But anyway, something's going on. These kids are being taken. The other thing is, yes, there's a giant dragon on the cover of this book. So you might be thinking, what does that have to do with anything? So in this world, there used to be all these different gods, and all of these gods took the form of like an animal. So there was a dragon god, there was a wolf god, a rat god, there was like a bird, an eagle god, all these different gods. And the father of all of these gods was this big snake called Snaka. But at some point in the distant past, all of these gods had this big war, this big battle, and Snaka, the big snake god, was defeated. He was defeated, and now there is this mountain range that's like, was built out of his bones. So since that happened, no one has seen these gods for a long time, but things start happening that suggests that maybe there's something going on, and maybe the gods aren't as dead and gone as we think. I'm just going to leave it there without giving away any spoilers, but again, you could probably put 2 and 2 together here. What I like about this book, what I like about all fantasy books, the books that I really like, is the characters. Our 3 characters here, Orca, Elvar, and Varg, they're so deep, they're so nuanced, they're so complex. They're not just one thing, they are many things. And my favorite is definitely Orca. My favorite is Orca because not only is she a badass warrior, but like I said, she's a mother, and she is a true mother, not someone who just says like, yeah, a mother, and then like you never see them interact with their children at all. No, she's a mother first and a warrior second, but that does not mean that she's any less like powerful or any less of a fighter than any other of the men or the male characters that she comes across. She's just awesome. She's just super cool. Super cool. Such a cool character, and I really appreciate the fact that John Gwynne had not 1 but 2 strong female characters. As a fellow female, like, that is really important to me, and it really speaks to me, especially in fantasy, like adult fantasy, which is tends to be like really male driven. Like, women tend to write a lot of YA fantasy, men tend to write a lot of adult fantasy. But I appreciate that this is a dark, gritty, violent story that has awesome female characters front and center. The actual plot of this book is fantastic. It's fantastic. Like I said, we have our 3 POV characters, so you constantly switch back and forth between the 3. And in the beginning of the story, like, these 3 characters are in very different places. They all have very different storylines. They're all on very unique journeys, and that continues throughout the book. But as the book starts to get towards the end, you start to see how these three characters, like you start to see, piece together how they're going to connect and where they're going to connect. And I love when things are foreshadowed. I love when you read and you feel like you're kind of doing a puzzle and you're putting the pieces together. I love that. And one of the things that made this book so fun to buddy read is David, I kept asking him like, oh, what do you think this means? What do you think this is going to happen? Like, why do you think they're kidnapping the children? Like, what do you think's going on? And it was made this really fun like game almost of like trying to guess what was going on, why it was happening, who was involved, what the outcomes were going to be. I love that. I love that this fantasy book generated so many of these questions that were like such fun discussion topics. So yes, this book is definitely worth the hype. I am definitely going to be reading the second book that comes out. And now I want to go out and read John Gwynne's other series. I have not read his other series before, but now I really, really, really want to, because this book has amazing world building, it has fantastic characters, and it has a great plot. The only thing that I will say I did struggle with a tad, just a teeny tad, is that there are a lot of side characters. David and I talked about this. I know he said this as well in his section, but specifically with Varg and Elvar's chapters, both of those characters were like traveling with a war band. So a big group of characters, and within those groups, within those war bands, the Bloodsworn, there's leaders, there's side characters, there's interpersonal relationships, there's drama, there's some romance in one of them. So there is a ton of side characters, and I did have a hard trouble at times like trying to remember which side character actually belonged in which group and like which ones were related, and etc, etc, etc. If you've been here a while, you'll know I'm a crazy person that reads multiple books at once, so that was a little hard to keep track of sometimes, but it did not take away from my enjoyment of this story. It did not. But I just want to warn you, if you are someone that has a hard time with hundreds of side characters, that might throw you off, but just keep going. Just keep going. That's it for my review of the Shadow of the Gods. Hopefully I have inspired you to pick it up, give it a try. Just be prepared to pick up a book 2 as well, because you're going to want to read it as soon as you finish this one. Thanks for watching my review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. Happy reading!